Hiya. So it's me again, and with each passing day, it seems that Maplestory is giving more and more reason for players to create mules. At first, we had character cards, which gives small stat bonuses, if anybody even remembers those. Then we got the link skill system, still prevalent to this day considering how long ago it was released. And then we got Legion, which gave players a huge opportunity to get massive stats without having to equip any sort of gear. And soon enough, we will have the Champion Legion system, which gives a small circle of characters a large amount of stat bonuses for being able to solo bosses. So I think as of right now, it is safe to say that if you want to progress in Maplestory at least relatively efficiently, it's absolutely necessary to have mules. Which is why I think there's no better of a time to make the super, giga, ultra, omega, complete, and comprehensive guide to everything involving mules, going in as much depth as possible about link skill and legion mules, and the various stages of a boss mule, and how to progress them into a legion champion. Disclaimer: this video will try to cover as much nuance as possible, but cannot answer all of your questions. There is a lot of different classes, RNG, and time-based events that give different rewards and might change circumstances of how you would level up your characters given those scenarios. If there is anything specific you would like to know, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I will try my best to answer your questions as in-depth as possible. So, before we get into any of the systems, it is important to understand that Maplestory is a game that always has events going on, and incentives when you take part in these events. Such incentives include rewards that allow you to progress your mules a lot faster than what you would normally be able to accomplish. Here's a list of important leveling event rewards and when I think is the best time to use them. So the first and most important event are character burns. They can come in three forms, either Hyper, Terra, or Mega, and essentially what these do is they allow you to skip 2 levels for every time you level up, until level 260 for the Hyper Burn, until level 200 for the Terra Burn, and until level 150 for the Mega Burn. If you can use a burn on character creation, it is generally best to do so. But sometimes you'll get these burns in the form of an item which turns a character into a burning character. If you get your burn in the form of an item, it is best to use the Burninator at level 11 for Hyper and Terra burns, and it's best to use it at level 12 for Mega Burninators. You want to use it at those exact levels because you cannot exceed the maximum listed levels for each of the specific burns. So for example, if my character is level 259 and I level up, I will not go to 262, I will instead go to 260. So you want to be in the ideal scenario where you go from level 257 straight to 260, for example. Extreme Growth Potions, or Bonk Potions, is a potion that makes your character gain between 1 and 10 levels randomly. Granted, you can only use these potions between level 130 and 200. Now granted, as you level up, the odds for how many levels you will gain using the potion will go down. So if you're level 190, you're more likely to get 1 level instead of 5 or even higher like 10. So generally, I recommend using these potions on characters that are below 180 as your odds are typically best and most beneficial when you are below 180. Transcendent and Magnificent Growth Potions are very simple potions. They grant you 1 full level at level 269 for the Transcendent Growth Potion and level 249 for the Magnificent Growth Potion. These potions are very straightforward. You pretty much want to be using them as close to the max level as possible. Granted, sometimes there are situations where you don't have a character that fits within the level range, and sometimes it is okay to use these potions on a character that is slightly higher level than the listed potion level. So for example, sometimes you'll have a character that is level 270, and it's okay to use the Transcendent Growth Potion. Growth Potion Selector coupons are a coupon that allows you to pick a certain potion that fits for your level range. So you can either get 8 potions that level you up from 209 to 210. You can either get 4 potions that level you up from 219 to 220. 2 potions that level you up from 229 to 230. Or 1 potion that levels you up from 239 to 240. Now, the one thing that's good about this item in particular is how flexible it is. Sometimes, depending on the events, you want to be picking up the 8 200 potions, sometimes you want to be picking up the 2 220 potions, and sometimes you want to be picking up the 230 potion. The only potion that I don't recommend that you pick up is the 4 210 potions. In most cases, it's generally the most inefficient. It's best to use either daily XP or another event reward that I will shortly cover in a second. Golden Strawberry One-Time Entry Pass is an instance map that spawns 1,000 mobs and 5 bosses to give a whole load of XP. You can use these passes all the way up to 260, and they do scale all the way up to 260, albeit not that well. So I generally recommend using these passes between level 180 and 220. Now, one thing to note about these passes is that passive XP buffs from Legion, skills and link skills, and equips are effective in this map, while EXP coupons have no effect. The reason why this is the case is because this special map gives you a special EXP buff while inside the Golden Strawberry farm that gives you an extra 400% EXP. EXP vouchers gives a fixed amount of EXP based on level and can only be used after level 200. I personally recommend using these under level 240, and the best time to use these EXP vouchers are between level 210 and 219. A lot of the XP event rewards fall off after level 210. So for example, the Growth Potion Selector only gives you 4 levels, but these EXP vouchers maintain a lot of their value even after level 209, which is why I think it's best to use these EXP vouchers here. It takes a similar amount of EXP vouchers to level up as the 10 levels that come before it, between 200 and 209, while the EXP requirements are way higher than the first 10 levels within the 200s. Now, one last thing that I want to cover before I talk about Link Skills and Legion are the Empress's Blessing and Fairy Blessing buffs, which pretty much gives your whole account attack based on the level of your highest level Cygnus Knight or your highest level character. The buff that is the highest level will be applied and the other will be null. Granted, the Empress's Blessing goes to level 30 as at the max level, whereas the Blessing of the Fairy only goes to level 20, and the scaling for both skills is also different. Empress's Blessing increases by 1 level every 5 levels, and Blessing of the Fairy increases by 1 every 10 levels. Each level gives 1 attack, so at max level, Empress Blessing, you will receive 30 attack or magic attack. So this pretty much means that if you have a level 150 Cygnus Knight, you will have a bonus 30 attack and magic attack for your whole account. Don't forget to make a Cygnus Knight that shares the same main stat as your main for Legion purposes. I'll get into that later. I think it is only natural to cover mules in the order of which you would get them in chronological order. Going by this logic, the first mules you would probably want to create are link skill mules. In order to know what a link skill mule is, we first need to talk about the link skill system. Link skills are something you can manage in your beginner tab through the link manager. Every character in the game has a link skill of its own and can learn 12 link skills from other classes of your choosing. This is assuming that you have that specific character leveled, of course. You can swap link skills whenever you like, but you only have limited swaps during the day. You can swap link skills 10 times a day, and that number resets when it is a new game or new day in game time. So this is 8 p.m. Eastern, or 0 UTC. After your 5th swap for the day, the link skill transfers will begin to cost you meso, starting at 5 mil per link and going up by an extra 5 mil for every extra transfer. Only one character can have link skills learned at a time. Now note, with this new Stargazer patch in June, it's being changed so that multiple characters can have link skills learned at one time, and there's no limit to how many times you can transfer link skills, so link skills will be completely open. Link skills can also be leveled up depending on the level of the character or how many characters you have in a specific branch of characters. Level 1 link skills unlock at level 70, level 2 link skills unlock at level 120. And the global version of Maplestory also has a 3rd link skill level for specific classes that unlocks at level 210. Only certain GMS classes can get level 3 link skills, and that includes Mihail, Mercedes, Aaron, Phantom, Luminous, Evan, Ark, Demon Avenger, Demon Slayer, Kaiser, Angelic Buster, and Lyn. Branched classes need multiple mules to reach their max level link skill. For example, the Explorer Warrior link skill, Invincible Belief, has a master level of 6, which means that you will need a Hero, Paladin, and Dark Knight to at least level 120 to reach the master level, as each character adds 2 levels to the link skill. Note, this does not consume multiple link skill slots and is all considered one skill, even though 3 characters are being used to level this skill. The branched link skills include the Explorer Warrior's Invincible Belief, the Explorer Mage's Empirical Knowledge, the Explorer Archer's Adventurer's Curiosity, the Explorer Thief's Cunning, the Explorer Pirate's Blessing, the Cygnus Knight's Cygnus Blessing, and the Resistance Spirit of Freedom link skill. Zero also has a special link skill for finishing their story, and it goes up to level 5. I only suggest this link skill for people who are maining Zero, as all it gives is a decent boost of IED. It goes up to 10%. So now that we have the basics of link skills out of the way, we can now properly discuss the priority of link skills and how to level them up efficiently. Getting to level 70 is generally the easiest and grants the largest benefit, so the first priority to leveling link skills is getting a whole bunch of characters to level 70. You can compound those link skills to level subsequent mules even faster. After acquiring all the mules you need to level 70, you can then push to level 120 for level 2 link skills. I would not personally go for level 3 link skills unless if you have event rewards at your disposal. Refer to the event rewards section. So, in essence, leveling link skills incrementally will prove to be the most efficient. Now granted, skipping levels for link skills can also work if event rewards are at your disposal. For example, going for a level 2 link skill right away is not a bad idea if you have a mega character burninator. The same can also apply with level 3 link skills, assuming that you have Terra character burninators or a lot of bonks that you can use to skip the region between 120 and 200. Now, before I give a complete list of the order of how I would level mules, we also need to talk about Legion because it too gives your account bonus stats based on how you level up your character and can situationally change depending on what class you main or what classes you intend to level. Alrighty, so this is ACAD from the future here, and I realized that I actually didn't even cover what I personally think is generally the best link skill presets to have. So I'm just going to drop it right in the middle here before I actually start talking about Legion and why I think a lot of the link skills are the best here. So I'm going to start with bossing first, and of course this can change depending on what class you play, because if you play Demon Avenger, for example, you will innately have the link skill, so if you play a class that specifically has a best in slot link skill, definitely look at the class Discord to see what replaces the last link skill in question. So to start off, I think that Kana and Demon Avenger are absolutely necessary if you just want to be able to do more damage. Hands down, no questions asked. Granted, the Kana link skill can be replaced with situationally like some other link skills, like the Ctene link skill, which I actually don't have, which is really funny, and it can also be replaced with the Adele link skill if you're playing in a party, as it just gives more damage overall. Empirical knowledge is hands down best in slot, as it gives 9% damage and 9% IED as long as you're attacking the boss, which will happen. Focus Spirit can also be replaced with Cadena or Adele if need be, or if you don't really need the crit rate, because 10 boss damage isn't that high, and the 10 crit rate, 5 HP, and MP aren't necessary if you already have the crit rate that you need. Now, granted, if you are an archer, this link becomes best in slot because that 10 crit rate can be seen as 5% crit damage. Fury Unleashed is best in slot, 20% boss, 4% crit damage, best in slot, 4% crit damage. The Mochuan link skill is actually best in slot. It's basically like the Arc link skill, but you get boss damage instead. So it gives you 16% damage overall because you get 2% boss for 6 stacks, which is 12%, and then an extra 4% on top of that. Solace is best in slot pretty much at all points in time, whether you're bossing or farming. This link skill just gives you a lot of damage, considering that you pretty much always want to be in combat. When fighting literally anything, this link skill is really good. Spirit of Freedom. Now, if you're really, really fiending for damage, you can swap this out, but it is generally risky. And for shorter fights, the 8 seconds of invincibility and the uptime that you get from this and the utility can be worth a lot more than, you know, just getting an extra 10% damage, for example. Angelic Buster, easily best in slot. No doubt about it. Being able to get 60% damage within a short window makes this ability really overpowered for bossing. This is an active, so you'll have to bind this to a key. You can, assuming I apply it, you can click it and put it on one of your keys. Thief's Cunning, best in slot, 18% damage within a small window, which is good. Time to Prepare is like a weird version of Thief's Cunning, where if you attack a boss, you get these stacks. At 5 stacks, it gives you the damage bonus for 20 seconds, and it goes on cooldown for 40. So it's kind of on a different timer in comparison to Thief's Cunning, but considering that they give you a large amount of damage in a small window, makes them better than just the average damage buff. And Wild Rage, when you max it out, is just 15% damage. Now, let's talk about farming links. A lot of it stays the same. So Elementalism and Wild Rage stay here. What is new, though, is Nature's Friend, which is Lara's link skill. Gives a lot of normal monster damage bonus. I should have the Ho Young link skill here, but I don't. The Ho Young link skill is best in slot for farming, as it gives you 14% damage against enemies with 100% HP, which is exactly what you want, because you want to be one-shotting your enemies. Solace is still here, as it just gives a lot of damage. Then you have the EXP links from Evan, Mercedes, and Aaron, which is Rune Persistence from Evan, Elven Blessing from Mercedes, and Combo Kill Blessing from Aaron. With the rest of the link skills, you can kind of just fill the slots. If you need crit rate, you put in crit rate. If you want stats, you put in stats. Anything that just gives you damage against all targets. Because besides Lara, there is not really a link skill that gives you damage against normal monsters, so try to just fill in the slots with link skills that give you stats or damage against all monsters. Legion is bar none the most important system when it comes to building a strong account in both the early and endgame in Maplestory. So what is Legion? Legion, or Legion levels, is the summation of your 42 highest level characters. You can place a portion of these characters on a Legion grid. The number of characters you can place on the grid and how much of the grid is unlocked depends on your Legion level. Each specific character has a stat when placed on the Legion grid, and the Legion grid itself also gives stats depending on where you place a character on the grid. Now granted, you have to start the grid by placing characters in the middle and branching out to reach the more desired stats that are confined to the outer edges of the grid. The stat in which a character gives when placed on the grid can improve based on the character's level. There are specific checkpoints where stats get improved. The B rank is at level 60, the A rank is at level 100, the S rank is at level 140, the double S rank is at level 200, and the triple S rank is at level 250. So for example, a shade at level 60 placed onto your Legion grid will give you 1% crit damage, whereas a shade that is level 250 instead will give you 6% crit damage. Notice the other big number under your Legion level. Well, those are Legion coins. Legion coins are a currency that you can use at the Legion shop to buy highly valuable things. EXP coupons, Meso coupons, drop rate coupons, buffs, epic potential scrolls, gold potential stamps, and flames are of the most important things that you would want to buy from that shop. Legion coins are generated mostly passively based on the Legion raid power of the characters that you place on the Legion grid. Legion raid power is determined by the level of the character and the star force and general damage range of the character. So the higher level and the stronger a character, the more Legion raid power. 1 million raid power generates 0.8 Legion coins after 24 hours, or 1 day. So 100 million raid power generates 80 coins every 24 hours. There is a weekly quest in which you can kill 100 wyverns and 20 golden wyverns to give you an extra 200 Legion coins per week. I actually saved the best for last because the most important thing that you can do with your Legion coins is actually leveling up your Legion. Every 500 levels you can level up your Legion, which will allow you to put an extra character onto your grid. More characters on your grid means more stats for you to enjoy. There are checkpoints that give massive increases in the amount of characters you can place on your grid and the area of the grid in question. The outer grid expansions start happening at 2,000 and finish at 6,000. Every expansion of the outer grid happens every 1,000 levels. So at 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6,000 is when the outer grid expands. The massive character expansions happen at 3K, where your characters that you can place on the grid goes from 13 to 18, 5,500, where the characters that you can place on your grid go from 22 to 27, and 8,000, where the characters that you can place on your grid goes from 31 to 36. But that's not all, there's actually more. There's one more tab in the Legion menu that opens up the Legion Artifact menu. Legion Artifact is a system that gives you even more bonus stats on top of the regular Legion system. By default, you will have one artifact unlocked. You can progress this system mostly by completing the challenges in that system. Some are daily challenges where you have to kill monsters, some are weekly where you have to kill bosses, and some are one-time challenges where you have to chase for achievements. By completing these challenges, you will get artifact EXP to improve your artifact level. By improving your artifact level, you'll get artifact AP, which can improve the stats of your Legion artifact. At certain level checkpoints, you will unlock new artifacts which can further improve existing stats, or give you new artifacts which will give you more stats beyond what you had on your initial artifacts. By completing challenges, you will also gain artifact points which can be used to change the stats on a specific artifact whenever you like. Stats on artifacts are time limited and can be extended by using artifact points. So given all that, there is obviously a priority that you want to use when actually filling out your Legion grid and when leveling up your Legion artifacts. So the stat priority generally for your Legion when you start unlocking the outer grid is going to be crit damage, boss damage, and IED. If you have anything left over, then go for stat and attack. If you main an archer, you're going to go for crit damage, boss damage, and then crit rate, and then IED. Typically, you won't have anything left over because of how big the sections are on the outer spaces of the grid. If you main an Explorer Mage or Dark Knight or any other class that scales heavily with buff duration, you go crit damage, boss damage, buff duration, and then IED. And when farming, you want to go for crit damage, then normal damage, and then EXP obtained. One thing I actually forgot to mention about the Legion artifact and its stats is that stats will only be maxed out when 2 artifacts share a single stat. So for example, in order to max out the crit damage that you get from Legion artifacts, you will need crit damage on 2 of your artifacts. So given this, you want to follow this priority typically. So for the first and the second artifact, you want to roll for crit damage, damage, and boss damage. On the third and fourth artifact, you want to go for crit rate, IED, and buff duration. And for the fifth and sixth artifact, you want to get +1 target on multi-hit skills, XP, meso, and drop. Now, Legion artifact is a relatively flexible system, so if you know that you're not going to be bossing for the next little while, you can always change the stats of your third and fourth artifact to be XP, meso, and drop for when you're farming, and change it back to crit rate, IED, and buff duration for when you're bossing. Now, depending on what class you play and how well your class scales with crit rate, IED, and buff duration, you could just skip this entirely and go straight for XP, meso, and drop, but note that the option is always open for you. Now, the first and second artifact are pretty much always going to be true. You will pretty much always need these stats, of course, besides the boss damage, but the crit damage and the damage are very, very important and will just help you take out anything, whether it's mobs or bosses. So now that I've gone over everything involving link skills in Legion, it is important to keep in mind of some things when I talk about the most optimal way to level an account. I'll start with general picks and then discuss the niche ones depending on your main. So considering the first thing that you'll do when starting out an account is a lot of training and hitting mobs. So generally, we want to do more damage against mobs because it can prove to be quite difficult without any account bonuses or burns. Given this, I think it's best to start with Lara and Hlomien. Both animal classes give a crazy amount of damage against mobs. Lara giving 5% damage in general, which can be useful, and another 11% damage towards normal monsters, while Hlomien gives 14% damage against mobs with full health, which is technically 14% damage when mobbing because ideally you want to be one-shotting monsters, and 10 IED, which also makes these two classes not very bad for bossing. Their Legion stat bonuses aren't really useful unless if you main a mage or a thief, as they give their main stats respectively, Hlomien giving luck and Lara giving int. Next up, I would do Demon Avenger, Kana, and Arc. I don't think I need to say anything about these three, and they don't really need any introduction. All of their link skills give it damage against all targets, which is already better than most link skills by far. All three of these characters are also good terror burn targets, as their Legion is pretty much some of the best in the game. Demon Avenger and Kana giving 5% boss at level 200, whereas Arc doesn't really do much unless if you're a strength class, but Arc has a level 3 link skill, which is actually why I would terror burn it first, because the level 3 link skill in comparison to the level 2 link skill on Arc will give you an extra 5% damage. After this, I would focus on getting those crit stats and general stats up, which is why I would then do Hayato and Phantom. Phantom is too good of a link skill early to pass up, and Hayato is a very underrated pick in my opinion, as it has the best Legion stat in the game, with a very respectable link skill. Phantom gives a ton of crit rate, 20% at level 3, 15% at level 2, and Hayato gives all stats and attack. 25 attack, 15 all stats, and crit damage with its Legion. When you get it to level 200, you will get 5% crit damage. If you are leveling an archer, Phantom is really high priority because the crit rate can also turn into crit damage. So the level 3 Link skill becomes really high priority, which can make Phantom a really good terror burn target. And Phantom's Legion isn't bad either, as it gives meso percent, so if you want to farm at least a little bit of meso in the early game, Phantom can help with that. And now that we finally have a decent baseline of stats, it's time for the EXP Link skills. Evan, Mercedes, and Aaron, in that order, there is no debate. All three of these characters are good terror burn targets. Mercedes is also a good hyper burn target, because Mercedes gives a cooldown reduction as you level the character up. So at 250, you can reduce your cooldowns by 6%, which is actually relatively large. Now, the reason why Evan is better than Mercedes is because Rune XP scales with events and Sunny Sundays. Sunny Sundays sometimes double the effectiveness of runes, and sometimes events also do the same thing. If you know what Night Troop is, you'll know that cutting the cooldown of your rune timer by 30% and doubling its effectiveness will make runes a lot more effective than just a flat 20% XP. And Mercedes is better than Aaron because Aaron falls off really hard. Once you start getting past the level 100, the combo orbs really start to fall off. And it's very easy to quantify this because the combo orbs usually just give a flat XP based on your level, and that flat XP just tends to fall off really hard. There is generally one more character that I would create before going for any sort of bossing Link skills, and that is Kinesis, especially if you're a mage. His Link skill just gives crit damage. At level 120, you get 4%, and his Legion gives int. So if you're a mage, you double up. You can create this character before Hayato if you are a mage, as it's generally good. It gives almost the same amount of crit damage with a lot less effort. If you don't main a mage, then creating a Xenon is also a good niche pick before you start going for bossing Link skills, because it gives every stat besides int on its Legion, and it gives all stat percent for its Link skill, which means that nothing really gets wasted when creating a Xenon. If you have any terror burns lying around, this is also where I would specifically create a Shade and a Mo Xuan, as their Legion gives 5% crit damage. Mo Xuan also has a best in slot bossing Link skill, whereas the Shade Link skill kind of sucks, so prioritize Mo Xuan before you actually go for Shade. Now it's time to think about bossing, and now that you're thinking about bossing, a lot of things fall into place and become a lot more straightforward, as some stats are just worth more than others. So I'm going to set the bar higher and assume that at this point in time you're pushing for 3, 6, or even 8k Legion respectively. So given that, you'll go in this exact order. Angelic Buster first, Lyn if you main an archer, then Demon Slayer. If you don't main an archer, this is typically where I would put Lyn. I would put Lyn after Demon Slayer. Then I would do Luminous. Then Adele if you main a strength class and plan to boss in a party. If you don't, then ignore this part. And then Kayn. Then Explorer Thieves. Start with Night Lord because it gives crit rate, then Shadower and DB, as their Legion is the same. Then Explorer Mages. Do Fire Poison last because it gives MP instead of int. So the Legion block that comes from the Explorer Mages will help the mages that come after it. And then Resistance classes. Start with Wild Hunter, as its Legion is the best, as it gives you an extra final attack. Then do Blaster because it gives you IED. Then do Mechanic because it gives you buff duration. And then Battle Mage because its Legion is int. After that, it would just be a matter of leveling up characters that give you useful Legion stats. If you follow the order that I've given you above, you should have most already. The only ones that remain are Marksman for crit rate, Corsair for summon duration, and 0 for EXP percent. And then choose whatever character matches your main stat. So for strength, you'll have Hero, Paladin, Buccaneer, Cannon Master, Thunderbreaker, and Kaiser left. For Dex, you'll have Bowmaster, Pathfinder, and Wind Archer. Now, there are a lot less classes for Dex, so if there is not enough classes for you to get to 6 and 8k Legion, fill in another stat that you know that you're going to be using on another character, whether it be Strength, Int, or Luck. Same thing with Int. At this point in time, you should only have Blaze Wizard and Ilium left, and for Luck, you should have Nightwalker, Cadena, and Kali left. If you're not 8k Legion by this point in time, you should fill in the gaps with whatever classes you think are fun, or whatever classes have your secondary stat, or bossing mules that have that specific stat. Everything I have discussed up to this point was about low investment mules, serving to generate Legion coins and improve the stats of your account. However, there are many reasons why you would want to invest into your mules even further beyond just serving as a universal stat buffer and actually working towards clearing bosses just as your main would. Now, the main reason is to generate income for your account, as far as heroic is concerned, but there are many other reasons on top of that. Increased Legion raid power from having generally stronger characters, free cubes to tier items to unique and occasionally legendary, crafting items and potions including primal essences and red star potions, which can give you 20% boss, MVP 50% experience buffs, and reward points. So, in the beginning of the video, I mentioned that there are stages to boss mules, and ideally you want to think about it in this way because it conveniently aligns with the progression systems in the game. There are 5 stages to a boss mule. Typically you can consider these to be like checkpoints. The first checkpoint is Chaos Vellum, and this is pretty much just getting started out on a character. The second checkpoint is Nlomien, or Normal Lotus and Normal Damien. The third checkpoint is Hard Hlomien and Ntene, or Hard Lotus and Damien, and Normal Tenebrous bosses. The fourth checkpoint is Ctene, or Chaos Tenebrous bosses. This is everything all the way up to Hard Varishilla. And then there is the fifth checkpoint, a Champion. This is clearing up to as high as your character can clear, and this can be flexible and will change depending on how strong that character becomes or how strong the game tends to power creep itself. So let's talk about these checkpoints, the requirements you typically want to meet, how much time you should spend on these characters, and what sort of benefits you can actually reap. I want to make this very clear: the numbers that I will list are from personal experience and can fluctuate, but I am going to assume that if you're watching this video, at least for any sort of bossing mules, that there is a decent level of experience and practice being put into each character. I also do not recommend that you start making boss mules until your main is at least 260 and you're pushing past 3k Legion. So let's talk about the first checkpoint, Chaos Vellum. Considering how much harder Chaos Vellum is in comparison to the bosses that come before it, it is only natural that this is going to be the first checkpoint that a character will hit. Granted, power creep has come a long way and made it so that Chaos Vellum is relatively accessible. In most cases, characters approaching this level will be relatively fresh, node investment, and level-wise. The player will also be relatively new to the class, which means that the skill level will also be generally somewhat lower than usual. I also think that spending time on a Chaos Vellum mule is only worth it if you are relatively new to the game and are making less than 5 bill mesos a week. Given this, you typically want to approach Chaos Vellum or a Chaos Vellum mule with these stats. So you want your combat power to be in between 800k and 1 mil. You ideally want to be level 200. The arcane force that you want to be hitting is 40, so just finishing the Vanishing Journey pre-quest. You might as well do this because it is a lot of free stats, and the node investment is pretty much not there, only from the 5th jobs that actually come from the advancement. Generally, you'll be spending 1 hour on this character, and you'll be getting these rewards weekly. 800 mil mesos, between 0 and 3 hard cubes, and occasionally you'll see a red star potion from clearing the Chaos Root Abyss bosses. At this stage, typically all the items in your inventory will be 10 stars with 6% epic potentials. We're just looking to fill up our equip inventories with the boss accessory set and the Chaos Root Abyss items, or CRA for short. So the CRA top, bottom, hat, and weapon. The reason why I recommend this only for new players is because there's no real incentives besides the meso, which early game players do desperately need, and this gets you quite a bit without any sort of real investment meso or node wise. The next big jump from Chaos Vellum is normal Lotus and Nlomien. They share the same HP, it's just that Nlomien is a little more annoying, but if you can do one on a boss meal, you can typically do the other. Which is why this checkpoint was and still is so effective for making meso and building an account, because you get the benefits of both Lotus and Nlomien. These are the stats you typically want to reach for this checkpoint. Combat power between 4 and 6 million. Approaching level 220 or surpassing it. Arcane Force at 360, though this isn't necessary as Lotus and Nlomien are not Arcane River bosses. I only suggest this because it is easy to get those first Arcane Force levels and is a lot of free stat. And for node investment, you typically want to have around 300 to 500 nodes invested, where the boosts in your 5th job will be roughly around level 30, and your 5th job skills will be around level 10 or higher. Typically, you'll be spending 30 minutes on this character, and you'll get these rewards weekly. 1.3 billion mesos, between 6 and 9 hard cubes. Sometimes you'll get a solid cube or a few, so between 0 and 3 solid cubes. Between 0 and 4 red star potions, though typically you'll probably only get 1 or 2 per week, if any at all. And you'll also have a chance to get between 0 and 3 MVP EXP vouchers. Now you might ask, why should I be spending less time on a character that makes more resources than what was previously mentioned? And this is because of opportunity cost. As you progress, the resources that you can get from playing your main or another character tends to increase, which means that the value of the meso tends to decrease, which makes it harder to justify spending large amounts of time on a character that can only generate meso for you. This is also the case because you'll be progressing your mules to Absolab gear and getting them 17-star equipment, as well as getting their weapon, secondary, and emblem to legendary, which makes for a huge power spike. So even if the difference between power in between this checkpoint and the last seems large, it is in fact actually not the case. You might also be asking why I recommend level 220 for this checkpoint, and that is because you get the max damage on the level modifier against all the bosses you'll be fighting, including Lotus and Nlomien, while also getting your hands on a Latchlin symbol, adding on to the damage that you'll be getting from improving your gear. The third checkpoint is where I actually think serious mule investment will be needed in order to push characters to this checkpoint and the checkpoints beyond this one. This is also where variance can play a large part in terms of how much power you need in order to clear these bosses relatively efficiently, as Oz rings become a realistic drop for these characters, and characters with an Oz ring will do a lot more damage than characters without one. But this is also where the rewards from bosses start to diversify a little bit and have more benefits besides just mesos. So typically for this checkpoint, your combat power will want to be around 25 to 40 million combat power. You want to be around level 260 or beyond that. You want your Arcane Force to be at least 1,140. In terms of node investment, you want pretty much everything maxed besides your decents or other minor skills that aren't super important. And we also need to start talking about the Hexa Matrix. So in this specific case, or for this checkpoint, in terms of the Hexa Matrix, you just want it unlocked, so just the origin. Granted, I personally recommend having level 1 on everything unlocked in your Hexamatrix. Typically, you'll be spending 1 hour on a character at this checkpoint, and you'll reap these rewards weekly. 3 billion mesos, over 15 hard cubes, between 0 and 5 solid cubes depending on how lucky you are, between 0 and 5 red star potions depending on how lucky you are, 40 sparks of determination. You'll consistently get over 2 MVP EXP vouchers, between 0 and 2 red jade ring boxes, granted this is only useful for the character in question, and between 0 and 5 small XP accumulation potions, and the chance at a black heart. Sparks for black mage keys and black hearts are some of the more notable rewards that come out of hitting this checkpoint. I feel like this checkpoint has also become a lot more relevant recently because of the changes being made to the crystal prices, the intense power crystals. Also, now that 6th job is more accessible, the required investment for hitting this checkpoint has also been going down steadily. Typically around this checkpoint, you want to be working towards your Arcane Umbra set or getting high stars on your Absolab gear. This is the point in the game where typically you'll make the decision between going for Absolab or Arcane Umbra gear. This is also the point in the game where you typically start pushing your star force beyond 17, whether it be 19 stars on a lot of equips or 21 on some of the more notable equips that you know you're going to be keeping for a while, like any CRA pieces or any boss accessory item like the Black Bean Mark or Dominator Pendant. Also, by this stage, your character can technically be a Legion champion, just not a very good one. So after Hlomien and Ntene Mule, we have Ctene. This is by technicality the final stage of a quote-unquote boss mule, because anything beyond this point should be considered a main or a champion. A lot of the loot, at least in Heroic, will be loot that increases the character's personal damage and progression, while the meso gain only increases by a decent margin in comparison to the other checkpoints. Once again, variance is relatively high, and bosses beyond this checkpoint are much stronger and require a lot more investment. I do also think that Ctene is worth doing regardless of how fast the run is if you care for the character in question. Given this, I'll give general power ranges and how fast you can expect to clear. So for power, if you're between 50 and 65 million, you typically will be in the range of min-cut solos or very long solos, so anything longer than 20 minutes. Between 75 and 100 mil will net you a comfy clear between 10 and 15 minutes, and anything over 100 mil you pretty much should be nuking the bosses in a few bursts. For Ctene, you want to be higher than level 270. Arcane Force, you want max, then if you're in a guild, over 1350. Sacred Force, you typically will have because you're level 270, which means that your Sacred Force you also want, and you want it to be over 100 at the bare minimum. Node investment, you want to be pretty much completely maxed at this point in time. And in the Hexamatrix, you want at least 2,000 Soul Urda fragments invested into your matrix. Once again, I can't recommend what to invest in the Hexamatrix specifically because it's class dependent, but I'll give a general range of the amount of fragments that you typically want to invest. Typically, you'll be spending 2 hours on a character that does Ctene, and you'll reap these rewards weekly. So you get around 5.2 billion mesos, over 40 hard cubes, over 5 solid cubes, usually over 3 red star potions, 40 sparks of determination, between 0 and 4 primal essences, over 5 MVP EXP vouchers usually, between 0 and 4 red jade ring boxes, between 0 and 4 black jade ring boxes, usually over 3 small EXP accumulation potions, the chance at a black heart, and improved equipment for the character in question, so this being Pitched, Dawn, and Arcanes. I also consider this as a technicality for the last stage of a boss mule, because using dailies and events will not prove to be efficient when leveling a character from beyond this point, which means that you'll have to invest a lot of time, which means that you have to like a character enough to progress beyond this point, aka a champion or a main. At this point in time, you should be aiming to get 21 stars on all of your equipment in your inventory besides Arcanes, if you are using Arcanes, if you are actively using them. 2 line potentials for all your armors and accessories, while aiming for 3 line potentials on your weapon, secondary, and emblem. Once you have championed, this pun was so totally intended, all of Tenebris, and the only thing that remains is the min-maxing that exists in Maplestory, pushing higher levels, pushing for more authentic force, and getting 22 stars or higher on your equips. Now, Champion Legion isn't released yet in Global Maplestory, and when it does, I will release a separate guide for that. But for now, any character that is able to solo Black Mage or beyond can easily be considered a second main for now. Reason why I don't want to go into depth into Champion Legion right now is because the numbers might be adjusted for reasons that we don't know or changed when brought to Global Maplestory, and I want the information that I put out to be as accurate as possible. The reason why I also don't want to talk about characters beyond this point is because it involves the min-maxing that exists in Maplestory that pretty much needs a whole separate video, as that is another system that, or something that has a lot of nuance in and of itself. So for now, that'll be it. Once again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below. If you want to ask me questions live or get some real-time advice, check out my stream at twitch.tv/agcat3. If you guys want to see more ultimate guides just like this one, hit the like button. If we hit over 200 likes, I will actually promise to continue making more ultimate guides on topics that I feel are important or based on your suggestions. Much love, peace out, and thanks for watching.